I'm going to start off very high level and then get into a little bit more granular detail for this, because this is something that I think will apply to everyone who's jumped on this call. You know, I would imagine most of your organizations, if not all of them, you've written out some type of core values. You know, the things that are, so these are traits or behaviors that are so important to your organization that they should be non-negotiable. And that's why we use the word core, right? So I've seen some organizations that have 15 things that they value, and they list those as their core values. And those are not core values. It's just a list of 15 values. Core values are the things that are just so essential to the functioning of your organization that they're non-negotiable. So you would hire people based on these values. You would let people go based on these values. And, you know, if that's something that hasn't been clarified, you know, that's a good project for your team to work on. If it's something that is already clarified, you know, if you've already written out clearly articulated core values, it's very helpful. And it's good to limit that to 5, maybe 7 at the most. So just the absolute most, like, this is non-negotiable. If you're going to be on our team, you need to be a person of integrity. You need to be committed to excellence. Whatever your values are, it's good to have kind of a quick bullet that explains the value. And then it's also good to have measurable behaviors under each of those values. So, you know, for instance, let's just use the word integrity. I would imagine almost every organization, if you look at their core values, they list integrity as a core value, right? Well, what does that mean? I mean, if you ask 50 people, what is core values? What does integrity mean? You might get 30 or 40 different answers. So what's very helpful is to articulate that and what are measurable behaviors that are binary. So it's either somebody's doing it or they're not. So like in our companies, for instance, the way that we define integrity, there's 3 components to it. I do what I say I'm going to do. I tell the truth, unless there's a really good reason not to, but that's a longer discussion. That's literally like something like, if I don't tell the truth, or if I tell something that's not true, it's going to save somebody's life. That's very, very rare. But for most people, you could just say, I tell the truth, even when it's hard to do it. So, and then the third one is, I don't sacrifice my values or the values of the organization for short-term gain. So those to me are the 3 components of integrity. You're telling the truth, you do what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to be at a meeting at 5 o'clock, you show up at 5 o'clock or a few minutes early. And you know, if you've said that there's something that you value, you do your best to live in accordance with that value. That's living with integrity, right? So the idea is, you know, I would guess that somewhere in your values, even if it hasn't been articulated yet, you know, there's probably some value in like being a team player, being collaborative. And, you know, these are things where if you've got somebody on your team that is not living these values, that needs to be addressed as quickly as possible, particularly if it's undermining the performance of the rest of the team. Now, if it's in a sales situation, this happens a lot. Your team may be a revenue generating sales team. It's hard, especially if these people are high performers and they're bringing in lots of sales. But there are countless examples of organizations, teams that have realized, wow, yeah, this person's a top performer, but when they finally got rid of that person, the team performance actually went up. So even though you lose like a top performer, the rest of the team does better because they don't have a toxic person poisoning the well. So I'm not saying you have to get rid of this person, but what I'm saying is it has to be addressed very quickly, because every day that it goes by that it's not addressed, the morale of the team is going down. So that's part one. It's very important to be clear on what your team values, what your organization values, and you cannot let people come to work every day who are not living those values, yourself included. As leaders, we need to be living examples of those values. And there's, if you haven't got to that part of the training, there's a few trainings on that in the People Thriver program, but we can address a little bit now. So that's kind of the high level approach, right? Is we have to be committed to holding people accountable to not just work performance, like what they do, but also how they do it. Right? So those expectations need to be made very clear, and people need to be held accountable, because every day that somebody comes to work who's not living those values, you're telling everyone else on the team that, we're not really that serious about it. It's just some piece of paper we put up on a wall. And so then no one takes it seriously. And then, once you start really, living these values, and you're holding people accountable to them, you can even be hiring based on these values, and should be hiring, doing behavioral interviews, asking people to give real life examples of when they lived a value that is core to your organization. So that's the high level approach here. Now, in a more granular situation, what do you do with this person now, right? So how do you address this person who's disruptive to the team, not living the values? And this is a great opportunity for you to start serving as a coach, and helping this person build self-awareness. It's possible that they're not aware of how their actions are creating toxicity on the team. So this is where the value of one-to-ones, which I know you all just started the program, so you haven't gotten into one-to-ones and coaching yet. But this is the value of having regular one-to-ones. And in this situation, this needs to happen before your next one-to-one, if you've got one scheduled. I mean, I would highly recommend addressing the situation very quickly. But have it be a true coaching call, where your job is to kind of ask this person, what they're noticing. What you ask them about the most recent meeting. Like, so how do you think the last meeting went? Get their thoughts on it. What did you notice after you said blank? And there's a good chance that if you ask your questions skillfully, this person will acknowledge that they did something that was inappropriate, or that they could see it had a negative impact on the team. And you don't have to tell them. Now, there's also a chance that they lack that self-awareness, and you'll have to say, well, there's one thing I noticed when you did this. These were the results. People were demotivated. They felt embarrassed, whatever the case may be. And so this is where, having this kind of like this coaching mindset and communicating in a way that's not aggressive, but assertive. We try to just be very factual, which is, this is what I noticed. You said this, right? And the person's, unless they are just totally lacking self-awareness, they're not going to disagree with the fact that they said whatever it is that they said. And then you can note, you can point out, this is what I noticed. This is how I felt. This is how other people felt. And then you can just kind of stop for a second and see how the person replies. I mean, they might feel really bad. They might have not realized that they did that. And then that might be an indication that that person's not necessarily a poor values fit. They just need coaching on developing self-awareness and social skills. But it might be they don't feel bad at all. And then that might be, something where then you need to move to the next step, which is saying, like, look, this isn't acceptable behavior. We've been happy with your performance up to this point, but we can't allow something like this to continue. So are you willing to work on getting better in this area? And if they say yes, then let's come up with a plan for how you're going to get better in this area. And I want to help you get there. Now, if it's something that's not so serious, I always like to use the pull approach instead of the push approach. So instead of saying like, hey, this isn't acceptable, we try to understand, where does that person want to get? So maybe this person is a junior salesperson, but they want to be a COO one day, or they want to be a VP of sales, or they want to be an account executive instead of an SDR, or whatever their move is. Maybe they want to move on to another organization to do something entirely different. If we're truly serving as coaches, our job should be to help them get there. And so if we understand what somebody wants, what their goals are, then we can tailor what we're going to say to help them reach their goals. So if a person says, I want to be a leader of a team. In fact, I want to be an executive. I want to be a leader of leaders. And you can say, great. So what do you think? Where do you think you need to grow in order to do that, in order to be a leader or a leader of leaders? They'll probably tell you, well, I need to get better at, not creating a toxic environment. But if not, I mean, that's that's something you can certainly guide them with. Well, look, effective leaders do the A, B, and C. And these are areas where I think you have room to grow. I would love to help you get there. Let's develop a plan for how we can help you get there. And then, if you see that person's not doing the work, not taking the action needed to grow in that area, well, then that might be grounds for dismissal, that you might need to help them find another team to play on. Now, again, if this is a person you really want to keep, they're otherwise good performers, and this is a one-time thing or a two-time thing. You definitely don't want it to become anything more than once or twice. Then it's they're just not living the values, and they're not a good fit. So you have to help them live in accordance with the values. And so if you do have to let the person go, there is a pretty compassionate way to do that. And, it's based on, I actually learned this from a friend of mine named John Spence. He calls it the 4 sheets of paper. And so if you've got somebody where you're going to have to let them go unless they just make a dramatic change, then you can give them a chance to make that change. You can say, look, we've tried to coach you on this for the last 2 months or 3 months. We haven't seen any improvement. If we can't help you grow and we're doing everything we can, then we're going to have to help you find a different team to play on. Do you want to play on a different team? Would you like our help getting you a different job someplace, or do you want to try to stay? If they say they want to try to stay, then you could say, great, here's what we're going to do. On the first sheet of paper, I'd like you to write down something that you could do, some big change or big accomplishment you could make that would be so impressive that there's no way we could get rid of you. Like, we would just have to say, this is great, you've changed so much, or you've accomplished so much, we have to keep you. That's piece of paper number 1. Piece of paper number 2 is, I want you to write down everything you need from me and the leadership team to help you achieve that. Piece of paper number 3 is, what do you think should be the reward if you accomplish this thing? In addition to keeping your job, what would be a great incentive for you within reason, right? And if it's totally unreasonable, you can shoot that down and maybe amend it a little bit. And then piece of paper 4 should be, what should be the consequence if you tell us what goal you're going to hit, you tell us everything that you need, and we give you everything you need, and you do not hit this goal, what do you think the consequence should be? And most people are just going to write down, well, I should leave. I mean, I told you what I was going to accomplish. You gave me everything I need. I didn't do it. So then you don't have to fire the person. They self-terminate. So in this way, you help somebody leave on a good foot, where it's actually better for everyone if they're not a values fit anyhow, because every day that they're coming to work, they probably don't feel like they fit in quite right. And it sounds like the team members around them, from what you described, they're not really enjoying this person. So there's some conflict happening there, and you're actually doing everyone a service if you determine, and I'm not saying that you've determined this yet, but if you determine that this person is not a values fit and you can't help them act in accordance with your values, you're doing everyone a favor if you help them find another team to play on, and you do it in a nice way. You maybe make a reference to them or for them to another organization where they might be a fit, and then the team's happy because you've got rid of somebody that's not a fit. The person who left is happy because they weren't a fit and they knew it. And they feel good that you helped them. They might end up referring you your next team member, because they said, wow, they were so nice in the way they handled how I exited the company. They could be a referral partner for you.